Hello, everyone. Welcome to Shout Out with Sage on Stream and Hub Radio. I'm your host, Sage Stevens, and today we have another exciting episode. We have a dancer, a choreographer, producer, director. He's done every angle of the entertainment industry. Gary Thomas has built an impressive career in the industry, having stage shows in Los Angeles, in Las Vegas, New York, Shanghai, and a bunch of other places worldwide. And through his company, Gary Thomas Entertainment, he has created stunning productions for major brands like General Motors of Latin America, PLAYBOY, WAHL, and Sprint. And now he's back with his latest electrifying creation, Whiskey, an immersive live show that fuses cabaret, club, and rock music into one dynamic, high energy experience featuring singers, dancers, musicians, and comedians. So let's start the show with Gary. Thanks for being here.
How are you? It's nice to
I
be here.
thank you. Thank you so much. So, how did you get started in all of this entertainment?
I, since the age of probably 4 years old, 4 or 5 years old, anything on TV that had anything to do with dancing and singing, and I was just mesmerized, like standing in front of the TV, just blown away by all of it. It's just, I don't know where it comes from. It's in my DNA. There's no entertainers on either side of my family, so I don't know how it got to me. But and then I have two older sisters and a younger sister. But then when my older sister's around 5 years old, I'd be at the studio. They'd be taking class, and I finally said, I want to do that. And it started with tap, and then jazz, and then ballet, and then kind of went on from there. But it's just what I was always meant to do. Like I've known it since I was a little kid.
Like, so when you went to class, you had natural ability. They weren't like,
No, I think I had
you might need
I
to
yeah,
go to
I
do
started.
something else.
Yeah, no. I think I had natural ability. The tapping thing came really easy, and then, like I said, I expanded into, then it was jazz class, and then it was ballet, and then some musical theater stuff. And on the side, I was also taking drum lessons, which I think helped out rhythmically with what
Right.
I was doing, and really played into that as well. But it really is in my blood. It's like I can't imagine being in any other profession. I really can't.
You've worked internationally all across the world. How has that influenced your productions overall?
Well, I think for anybody, even if you're not in entertainment, the more you get to travel and experience other people's, other countries' music and their lifestyles and their clothing and where they eat and how they hang out and the clubs they go to, like it just opens up your mind to so many different ideas and
Mm.
possibilities. So as an entertainer and now as someone producing entertainment, I welcome listening and seeing anything from any other part of the world. Like, show me how it's being done differently, or how it's happening where you're at, which is completely different than where I am, that kind of thing. So
Well, yeah, I'm sure other places, you're good at, like, obviously, maybe, I don't want to say steal, but maybe commandeer like a few good points that they have.
I think what happens is you get influenced by it. It
Right,
becomes kind of goes into your wheelhouse. And
right,
like I said, you see it done a little bit differently, and you go, oh, okay, so I can open my mind up. I don't have to be stuck in a certain pattern or anything like that. Like, let's
right,
do it differently. Yeah.
right. You take that influence and then meld it into like your own style.
Yeah, that's a good way of
As
putting it.
an actor and as a figure skater and stuff. So yeah, like I see other people doing things. I'm like, okay, I wouldn't do it exactly, and you can't copy someone because you're not them anyways, but you can like make it your own. So yeah.
Totally. Yeah, completely.
What's been your most challenging uh, obstacle or problem that you had when being in all these different countries? I'm sure there's languages and culture barriers to overcome.
Mostly it's been the language, because I was in Shanghai for almost a year.
Oh wow.
But what's interesting, once you're there, you kind of start to naturally absorb it. And me and the cast, we came up with a phrase called taxi talk. We got really good in a taxi, speaking in Mandarin, saying where to go, and
Right.
you know what I mean, that kind of stuff. And it's just not complete conversations, obviously, but you do start to pick up on little things. in restaurants, that kind of stuff, and you kind of just acclimate to the environment. And now that I'm not there anymore, I can't tell you anything about that.
I lived in Japan for a while, so I know it's like
Okay.
the first, like when I first got there, some of the other people I was around, you know, that were from the Western world or whatever, they're like, okay, this is, you know, coco e das. I'm like, that's, they go, you need to know what coco e das. I'm like, what's that? They're like, when you get in the cab, it means stop here. Because in Japan, the doors don't open, like the back doors don't open. So you could like end up driving forever. And they're like, coco e das. That's like the first three words I ever learned.
That's great. I
So
love
yeah,
that.
but yeah, like the rest of my Japanese is definitely very rusty. So yeah, taxi talk, I get it. I totally understand. How do you stay creative and continue to push boundaries with your shows and within the industry?
Well, fortunately for me, I'm not a big retro person. Once I've done something, I don't, if I really was into it, I don't really want to hear it anymore. I don't want to see it anymore. I don't want to rewatch that movie. So, especially with music, I want to hear new stuff. I don't want to hear the stuff I heard in high school. I already did that. I don't want to hear the music from theater productions I've done. I've already done that. I want to hear brand new. I want to see the latest music video. I want to know what people are doing and how they're being creative, and kind of stay plugged into that, to the present. You know what I mean? What's happening
Right.
in the zeitgeist right now. Yeah.
Right.
And I think if you're going to stay in any field, well, yeah, but I think if you're going to stay in entertainment, you have to do that, or you can kind of get left behind. Do you know what I mean? If you're still doing what you were doing 15 years ago.
Innovative, creative, and being new.
Right.
Is that what you mean?
Right. Yeah, you can't keep choreographing the same number over and over, the same style over and over, or you can't record the same album over and over. That it's got to develop and expand at some point, or you kind of just got left behind.
Well, because people are like, okay, this is boring. I've already seen it. Like, you know, especially in LA, everyone's like, you know, we have so much going on all the time. We get a little spoiled, I think.
I think so too. I agree with that.
Yeah, definitely. I'm like, oh, I've already been here. I've already done that. I'm bored. Yeah. So, what's been one of the most challenging or rewarding projects that you've worked on?
The most challenging, and I'm not going to say the name of it because I don't want to give these people any credit or any limelight, but it was a musical I directed a few years ago that was just one of the most unorganized, unfocused things in my, like, I felt like I'd kind of seen all of it. And then I got involved to direct this musical, and the cast was amazing, but the people that created it were just a nightmare. And I could probably turn it into a sitcom if I wanted.
Well, you know, they say everything happens for a reason. So
yeah, and I'm sure people think I'm making up some of the stories or whatever, just for the sitcom. But it really just got. I was never so happy to see a job end.
You're like, get me out of here.
And finally walk the other way. But yeah, I would say that as far as that of a negative experience, I would say that's it. Yeah.
So with the show that you created, Whiskey, how did that come about for you? What inspired you to do it?
I tend to get inspired by just a snippet of music here or seeing something visual somewhere else. So, the Broadway musical, Anything Goes. The lead song to that is Anything Goes, and it's very upbeat and bouncy and blah, 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 blah. And a few years ago, I was watching something, I think on the CW network, but not really paying attention to the show. And then I started to hear this music in the background, and I stopped and I was listening to it, and it was a different version of Anything Goes. It was very slow and dreamy and kind of dark and moody. So I Shazammed it to see who was singing the song. And then I went to my desktop and I started listening to it. And the more I listened to it, just and how my mind works, the ideas just started coming. So I start immediately writing them down, and the show started breaking into sections. And Anything Goes, that version was going to be the opening of it for sure. That's how I'm opening it up. And it just kind of went that way. It's just always a piece of music. I can be anywhere in a restaurant. I'll just start to hear something. And then my mind's like, okay, I'm seeing stuff now. Like, what am I going to
Right.
do with this?
Yeah, you're visualizing it in your head. So from the idea phase in your head to the actual first show, how long of a time frame was that?
That was a couple years because of COVID, because
Oh,
I really started writing the show and putting it together a few months before everything shut down. So then it kind of got put in a folder on my desktop, and I didn't really think about it for over a year. And then as everything started to open back up, I was like, it hit me one day. I'm like, oh, whiskey, I haven't opened that folder in months. So I opened it up, started going through it, rearranging stuff, getting rid of a few things. I'm like, that idea won't work, that won't work, but this works better if this song is here and this is here. And that's when I was able to put it on paper exactly how I was going to do it. Yeah.
when it comes to casting, what do you look for in talent? Like when, you know, whether it's a comedian, a singer.
Well, for me, once again, the music helps me pick or gravitate towards the type of singer I might want, or the dancer or whatever. And after that, it's just kind of like, well, we live in this digital world now. So I was able to actually cast the whole show off of Instagram. I know it sounds ridiculous, but like I was messaging singer friends of mine and I'm like, are you available to do this? Because no, I can't do this, but here's a list of 6 female singers that
Right,
I would hire for anything. So check them out. And
right.
the same thing with the male singer. And then the dancers, a choreographer friend of mine sent me, I told him what I was doing. He sent me like 10 names, 10 female dancers. And so I just started at the top of the list and went through and started looking at their reels and their videos on, on Instagram or wherever they have their materials at. And from that, I just picked everybody. I got very blessed with whiskey because everybody's phenomenal and they
Mm.
all get along really well. They all melt together really, really well. So the show is seamless. Rehearsals are seamless. Everybody has a good time.
What, you didn't
It's
have any divas? Come on, you had to have a diva
no, no,
here.
no, no. This I don't do divas, and this is definitely an ensemble show. There is no
Okay.
star. They
Okay.
all have to be phenomenal, and they all have to be able to take the stage by themselves at some point and stand out. I don't have backup dancers or backup singers. Everybody is takes the lead at some point, so they all have to be good at what they do.
What would your biggest advice be to someone that was looking to break into the industry as a singer, dancer?
Study your craft really well, stay focused. If you have a passion for something, follow it. If that's singing, if that's dancing, if that's clothes design, if it's acting, whatever it is, if that's what like I told you, dancing was just in my DNA, entertainment's in my DNA. If that's what you're feeling, follow it, put the blinders on, don't let anybody talk you out of it.
Yeah,
Because
because
along the
there's
way,
always people that are gonna like go, no, that's a bad idea. Exactly.
yeah, like I remember, I mean, I think she meant well, but my senior accounting teacher said, "What are you doing after?" She goes, "Your grades are getting kind of bad. What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm going to be a professional entertainer." And she went, "That's never happening for you, so you better have a backup plan." I don't appreciate that she said it that way. I think she could have structured that sentence a little bit differently. But I just put that out of my mind. I went, "No, I can feel it. I know where I'm going." So for anybody in this industry, if you have a passion, follow it, study your craft, and learn as much as you can about the part of the business that you're in.
What would the biggest piece of sage advice someone else has given you?
Oh, when I was in my early 20s, I was in this horrible. I was living in Daytona and I was waiting tables. I wasn't really taking class. Things had kind of I'd gotten kind of sidetracked, and
Mm.
I was in a really bad relationship. And I met this guy named
We've all had one of those.
Yes. So I met this guy named Chuck, and he was a producer, director, choreographer, and he owned his own dance studio in Florida, in Daytona. But he also did theater productions just outside of Chicago. Um, and I started taking class there, and then I started teaching for him when he was out of town.
Mm.
And at one point, he said to me, he was so blunt about it, but I appreciated it. He said, "As long as you stay with that person, you will never go anywhere." He said that because I had missed some gigs, I had missed some teaching things
Right.
because of
They
the
were, yeah.
and he just said point blank, if you stay with him, you will amount to nothing. And he didn't tell me break up with him. He just said, if you stay with him, you will amount to nothing. And that's it. And then a
Well,
couple
yeah,
months
because you
later,
could see that all the negativity that that person's bringing to you, and
yes,
and like I just know from my own relationships, yeah, like when you're with someone who's like bringing all this negativity, yeah, you start missing things because you're dealing with all their crap, and so you're like, and you're dealing with that, and then phone call, you're dealing with their phone calls and all the drama in the phone call when you could have like been doing something more positive with your time.
yeah. So he really believed in me, and he had said to me, if you decide you want to leave this guy, he goes, I'm doing 42nd Street, the musical, at a theater outside of Chicago in a couple months. And he left Daytona. He was out doing stuff. And about
Right.
another month went by, and things had gotten so bad on my end that I picked up the phone and called him. And I said, do you still have a part for me in 42nd Street? He goes, yes, I will send you the plane ticket.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
No, he sent me the ticket. I went to Chicago and I never looked back. It was the best decision that
Right.
I ever made, but it was so helpful to have somebody that didn't mince words with me. I loved the directness. He wasn't mean, he was just direct. And I try to do
Right.
that with people in my life now because of that. So,
Right. No, it's really important. Just to delve a bit deeper into that. So because I think a lot of people have relationships and they aren't the best. So how long did it take you from him saying that to you, his guidance, to actually leaving the relationship?
that was about, I'd say, 30 to 35 days later.
Okay. Oh wow, you didn't waste any time.
Because we had been together for about 3 years, and it really was in a very dark place. And I can't just blame him. I mean, we were in our early 20s. I
Right.
wasn't the best either. Like, it takes one to, like attracts like. So you have to pay attention to the energy you're putting out into the world.
Right.
Um, but it just was at that point, and his words just kept resonating in my head. And I really kind of started to see it, that if we
Mm.
stayed together, my career wasn't going to go anywhere. I'd probably be in Daytona 10 years from now, still with him, waiting tables and being really bitter about the fact that I didn't follow what I was
Yeah. What
supposed
you
to
want.
follow. Yeah.
How important is it to find people that have positivity and uh, creativity that you gel with?
It's very important now. I didn't realize how important it was early on in my career. And sometimes you surround yourself with people that, even though they're in the industry, they're still not the best people to be around, you know? But now, the longer I've been in it and the older I get, it's like I have to have the most peaceful working environment possible. And I
Mm.
can't control everything, but I can control who I hire. I can control my rehearsals. I can control my show. I can't control the venue. If the lighting guy doesn't show up or something weird happens, I have no control over that. But within the people I am spending the most time with, they have to be focused and positive. And it doesn't mean no one ever has a problem, but
Right.
problems can't be the dominant thing. They can't be anymore. They
Mm.
can't.
How important is networking and your team of people around you when you do a show?
I think it's incredibly important. I like to go out and talk to the people in the audience and introduce who I am.
Mm.
Even if you're a party you're talking about, you just never know who you're talking to. Years
Right.
ago, I was in Chicago again doing some theater, and I went and took a dance class. And before I left the studio, the woman said to me, who owned the studio, she goes, "Do you have a dance reel?" So I gave her my reel, and I
Mm.
left. About 6 months later, I get a call from a production company wanting to hire me for a cruise ship.
Oh
And so we're
wow. Okay.
talking, yeah. And so we're talking on the phone and everything. And then I finally said, "How do you have my reel?" And the woman wanting to hire me for the cruise ship, was friends with the woman that owned the studio in
Mm.
Chicago. So I took one class, gave this woman my reel, left, never thought twice about it. This woman watches it and sends it on to somebody else, who then hires me to go do this cruise ship show. Like, you just don't know
Yeah.
how
Well,
things pan out. Yeah.
how do you decide what to say yes to and what you say no to?
Um, I ask myself one question: if I don't do this, will I regret it?
Mm.
And even if it seems like a really messed up gig or something, if my answer to that is, you're going to look back on this and you're going to wish you had done it.
Mm.
And so that's where I try to stay in that space right there. Okay, This is the gig. This is the job. If I don't do it, how am I going to feel down the road? And sometimes it's real simple. And the answer is quickly, you don't want any part of that. And sometimes it's like, I'm not really sure, but I feel like when I look back on it, I'm going to be really upset that I didn't take this gig or explore this opportunity over here. But I think that goes back to instinct. You got to follow your gut every step of the way.
Right. So how important, yeah, like how do you know though? My thing is I sometimes wonder, is it my instinct or my ego, and trying to differentiate between those? How do you do that?
For me, I feel like when it's ego, it's up here in my head. And when
Mhm.
I'm focused on instinct, it really is a feeling in my chest, not even my gut. People say I have a gut instinct. I feel like it's right here in my chest, and there's that thing. And a lot of it is about just sitting down and getting quiet for a few minutes. Okay, this is all the stuff in front of me. What do I want to do? What do I want to get rid of? What do I want to make sure I'm holding on to? That kind of thing. Yeah. I think ego is more head and thought, and instinct is more in the center here.
When you're dealing with so many different people, I mean, you're dealing with a lot of egos. What, how do you, what tactics do you use when you're, having to deal with like a difficult situation?
I'm really good at staying calm and figuring out how to get through it in the moment. Now, maybe later on, like let's say me and you go to hang out after the gig, I'll unload on you. Say this person, that person. I wish I could have said this instead of that, but
Yeah, yeah.
that stuff doesn't get you anywhere, and it just complicates the mess. So for me, I like to take a breath. What's my plan B? If this person isn't helping me, who do I need to go to next to make it happen? And like I said, some things are just out of your control, and you got to take a breath and pull everybody together and say, okay, how do we make this work right now? We got 30 minutes before the show. What do we do? And that's usually when you have a good cast, how people can come together and go, I'll do this over here, or I'll move over to there. I won't wear this. I'll wear that instead. That kind of thing.
Okay. Well, with that, we're gonna like segue just a little bit because I have to talk about some people myself. And I want to talk about these hats from my sponsor, Rage, and that's Rebel Against General Expectations. And I think with most people in LA, because we're creatives, we're always rebelling against general expectations. So they have lots of cool hats, and actually, okay, in different colors. And if you go online and look at their site, you'll get a 10% discount with Rage Sage. And then we have my water, well, not my water, but Meta H2O. It's all pH balanced, really good for you. So Meta H2O today. I want to thank everyone for sponsoring me. So cool. And now back to the show. I don't know. Did you ever watch those? Like, I feel like back in the 50s and 60s, like when they had the the soaps and they actually did the commercials within the soap. That's what I sort of feel
Oh,
like.
yeah. That's funny. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
That's
that's
very
what I
funny.
feel like. Like, because I remember that. I don't know. So, anyways, okay. Um, Next question for you, Gary. What do you see yourself doing in the next 5 years? What path do you have?
I really feel like whiskey is the one that I need to make explode. I want to have it I want to find a space in LA where I can be doing the show once a week. And then
Mm,
as that's really building, then I want to do a version of the show in Las Vegas, Chicago, New York, Nashville, and Miami. But I won't take the cast from here and move them. I'll go to each city and cast within that city, and then
oh,
taper the show to the area that I'm in. Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
Like what
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
doing here, yeah,
totally.
what I'm doing here is not going to necessarily work in Nashville, but I have family in Nashville, so I have connections to that. I have friends in Miami. I have friends, and I've worked in New York and Chicago and Vegas. So I would like to have a whiskey show running. on a weekly basis in every one of those cities. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's great. Yeah, because the vibe in Miami is very different than obviously Nashville. I mean, those are distinctively different
Totally.
populations. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good idea to like sort of gear it to the geographic area. Well, the show is called Shout Out with Sage. So who would you like to give a shout out to today that's been pivotal in like helping you in your career?
Well, going back to the guy Chuck I was talking about, who told me to get out of that. Unfortunately, he passed away a few years ago, but
Mm.
he was just really instrumental on making me kind of get my head straight and go, if you really want to go down this path, you got to cut out all this nonsense on the side and stay focused. And he would give me gigs in a heartbeat. He would call me and say, what are you doing right now? I'm like, I'm already booked. Okay, I'll call you in another month. And I went back and forth to Chicago several times and did 3 or 4 musicals with him. I would teach at his studio in Daytona. He was just, I didn't even realize he was a mentor at the time, but that's kind of what he turned out to be. And it came out of the blue. I couldn't have predicted it. It was just random. And we had a great relationship and he made me laugh. He was funny. He would, you're not allowed to smoke in the theaters.
Okay.
But he was older and he would stand there with the cigarette. And the stage manager would run up and say, Chuck, you're not allowed to smoke. And he would just take a deep puff and then blow it out and still keep smoking. And at the time, and at the time he was about 60. And I remember one day rehearsals, and we were all in our early 20s, and we're all like, oh, we're tired from last night, blah, blah. And he was like 60 at the time. He gets up on stage, he puts his coffee down, and then he does about 6 backflips. And he said, yeah, he goes, yeah, you're not tired anymore. And he started like, so yeah, Chuck, wherever you are, wherever that energy is. Yeah, that was good for me. Yeah.
And how do we find you online?
The best place, I'm on a lot of social media stuff, but the crux of my stuff goes out on Instagram. So follow Gary Thomas Entertainment. Every time I book whiskey, it's posted there first. And there in the bio, there's also a Linktree address. You can click on that, shows what the bookings are and what to click on to get tickets and all of that kind of stuff. So Instagram, Gary Thomas Entertainment.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for being with us today. Is there anything you'd like to say before we go? I think you sort of got it all. So
just thank you. Thank you for letting me do this. This was so cool.
Cool. Well, thanks for being here. I know we had some problems getting it all coordinated there. But hey, we got it done. So.
Hey, once again, it happens when it's supposed to happen. So we got together today. It worked out. It was a fun conversation. Yeah. I got to see your hats and your water. So there.
Yeah. Actually, before I forget, I do want to invite you to a little soiree I'm having on the 15th. So keep that date open for me.
Okay.
If you're available, I'll give you information afterwards. So
okay.
I'm launching Sage's Secret. It's a new soiree I'm going to be having monthly in Beverly Hills. So you're definitely on the list.
Oh yeah, definitely send me the info. Definitely.
Okay, cool. Okay, well, thanks everyone for joining us today, and we'll see you next time on Shout Out with Sage. Okay, bye. Thanks.